I was laying in bed this morning listening to our local NPR station because I can't get our local progressive station, and I found myself screaming at the radio. I just have to say this, NPR and everyone else, by the way, because they're not the only ones who are pitching this line, please stop lying to us. Please stop reading corporate press releases to us and calling them news. Let me lay this out for you. This morning, NPR took a stab at covering the proposed merger of AT&T and DirecTV that was officially announced over the weekend on Sunday. Listen to this.
If you've streamed a movie or a TV show recently, you are part of the problem facing cable and satellite providers. These companies are facing more and more competition from internet streaming, and to survive, some are consolidating. Yesterday, AT&T announced that it is buying the satellite TV provider DirecTV. The deal, which still needs to be approved by government regulators, would be worth nearly $50 billion.
NPR is completely wrong. This has nothing to do with AT&T or DirecTV surviving. They're both big, profitable companies, and if the industry is changing, they can change to adapt to it, which, by the way, both companies are already doing. What this is really about is monopoly. Just like the Comcast-Time Warner merger, just like Sprint's plans to try to take over T-Mobile, and Sprint's not even an American company. This AT&T DirecTV move is all about monopoly. And it's, by the way, it's not limited to the telco industry. It's just they're the most recent because, you know, the internet is more recent than wheat. These mergers and acquisitions are about corporations getting so large that they dominate an industry and limit your choices to a very, very small number of companies, which then all suddenly start raising their prices and increasing their profits. What this is about, NPR, is screwing the customer. And it's all because back in 1982, Ronald Reagan stopped enforcing the Sherman Antitrust Act. It's amazing how things have changed since then. I mean, back in the 70s, Richard Nixon saw that AT&T's monopoly on telephone service was stifling innovation and jacking up prices to consumers and crushing competition. So he initiated a breakup of AT&T that ended during the Carter administration, broke AT&T into 7 regional carriers. They were known as the Baby Bells, and spun off their R&D arm. They called it Lucent Technologies. That was Carter in the 70s, right? Finishing what Nixon started in the early 70s. And then came Reagan in the 80s. And the Baby Bells began to reconsolidate. And so did everybody else in the industry. And now we are all paying twice, 3 times, sometimes 10 times what people in countries that actually enforce antitrust laws, countries like Germany and France, we pay so much more than they pay for internet, for cell phone, for cable TV. If the media had any interest at all in telling the true story, they'd say, AT&T is trying to further cement their control over the choices you have for telephone and internet service and grab a part of your choices about TV by buying DirecTV. If they're successful, expect your prices to go up while your choices go down, just as has happened pretty much every other time any industry has succumbed to this sort of monopolistic behavior. End of quote. Not that I want to do your work for you, NPR, but really. Do you really mean this? But they're not going to tell you that because they're nearly all monopolies themselves. NPR has a lock-on and a government subsidy for radio stations all across the country. The big TV networks and the big cable companies won't tell you what's really going on with AT&T because more and more of a monopoly, with them, AT&T becoming more of a monopoly because they're all playing the same game themselves. And it's not just telecom and media companies that are growing into virtual monopolies. I mean, right now, there are 10 giant corporations that control, either directly or indirectly, virtually every consumer product you buy. These companies are Kraft, Coca-Cola, PepsiCo, Nestle, Procter & Gamble, General Mills, Kellogg's, Mars, Unilever, and Johnson & Johnson. 90%. They got a complete stranglehold on the American consumer goods market. In the retail industry, Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Best Buys, They control a major portion of America's retail industry. You can basically pick any industry in America and see the monopolistic characteristics of it. And that's why we should pass a new version of the Sherman Antitrust Act that says explicitly, and by the way, the original version of the Sherman Act is still on the books, and it says if you break this law, you go to prison. Been a long time since anybody did that. Anyhow, it says that we need a new version of it that says explicitly that whenever a company reaches a point where they have more than a certain percentage of a marketplace, say 10 or 15%, that they just can't grow any larger in that domain. They have to leave room for startups, for innovators, and for competitors. There was a time in America when nearly every business on Main Street or in your local strip mall was locally owned by local families. They paid well. They took care of their employees. They had great customer service. If you're old enough to remember America before Reagan, you know what I'm talking about. The antitrust laws kept the big boys at bay for over a century, from the 1880s to the 1980s. There was even a TV show that ran from 1960 to 1964. It was called Route 66. Marty Milner and George Maharis driving from town to town as they went from coast to coast on Route 66. Every town was different. Every restaurant and hotel was unique. And those differences from place to place provided an unending series of interesting plots for that TV series. America back then worked because we enforced the antitrust laws. It's time to start doing that again. And even expand those antitrust laws and add some teeth to them. No more too-big-to-fail banks or retail stores or fast food franchises or media companies or internet companies. Let's get back to some core American values. Let's rebuild our nation's small business sector. Because until we do, you're not going to see innovation and competition in America. I mean, look at the pharmaceutical companies, for example. We're down to, I think it's a big six, and half of them aren't even American, headquartered companies. And now you've got one of them, what is it, Pfizer, trying to buy AstraZeneca so that they can move their headquarters out of the United States so that they can stop paying U.S. taxes, even though they want to use an American educated workforce, they want to use the American infrastructure, they want the American court system to enforce their patents. They want, they're all about having us help them be successful in business, but pay taxes? No. And so you got this handful of drug companies that can buy people like Billy Towson to propose legislation like Medicare Part D that says explicitly that, yeah, the government can give pharmaceuticals to people who are on Medicare, but they can't negotiate price. You got to pay full retail. You can't do like the VA does and say, we need 1 million. This year we're going to need 1 million penicillin pills. And instead of asking Pfizer or whoever, what's your price on one penicillin pill at retail at the pharmacy, which is what Medicare has to do, they say, if we wanted to buy 1 million pills, what kind of discount are you going to give us? Oh, instead of selling for $3 at retail, you can sell it to us for 20 cents at wholesale? Cool, we'll take it. We are getting screwed 16 ways to Sunday on everything from drugs to food to the internet. Because Reagan stopped enforcing the Sherman Antitrust Act, leading to the mergers and acquisitions mania of the early 80s, leading to Mitt Romney.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
And Mitt Romney's buddies, these private equity guys who make out like bandits sending our jobs overseas and stripping our companies.